Item 16, which is the Churchgate Street Conservation Area Management and Article 4 direction, which Councillor Gunn, you are proposing. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hardware, over to you, Councillor Gunn.
Thank you. Members who have been paying attention to this will be aware that this is a process that began in September when we consulted Churchgate Street residents on how best to protect the history and character of the area. What we're seeking to do is to introduce an Article 4 direction which would introduce planning permission requirements for certain works to houses to ensure that we can conserve the historic nature of the area. I think we all learned a bit, those of us who read up on this, about the deep and rich heritage that Churchgate Street has, even more historic than I think some of us had realised. There's also going to be amendments, indeed overall extensions to the conservation area boundary, and we now seek to move to a consultation on all of that, plus on a management plan and guidance document that would allow residents to understand what they will or may not be permitted to do in future, if and when this is introduced. In doing so, I should note that there's a strong focus in the report on the many steps that have been taken and will now be taken, if we approve this report, to fully consult above and beyond our statutory requirements affected residents to ensure that they have every opportunity to express their views. I want to place on record my thanks to those who have done with the consultation that's taken place so far, and put on a particular note of thanks to the 3 ward councillors who submitted a very detailed, very well thought through response to the consultation that has influenced the proposals we're now putting forwards. Indeed, an extension of the conservation area as a result of that. And a really good example for all of us, I think, of how ward councillors all across the town can engage with these processes on behalf of their residents. So thank you. I also want to place on record my thanks to the Residents Association of Churchgate Street, who've been important in this process and will continue to be as we proceed. And with that, I think I'll go to any questions you will.
Questions? Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few quick questions from me. It's been great to engage in this consultation process, given that Churchgate Street is the jewel in the crown when it comes to Old Harlow Ward. First question is just around something that the 3 ward councillors mentioned in our consultation response, and that is around the mitigation that the council may have been considering, just in terms of the impact of launching this consultation process, moving towards a position in February 26, whereby you want to confirm the fully fashioned Article 4 direction, and just in that period of time, what mitigation are you taking into consideration around the potential for people to use existing development rights to make alterations? What considerations have you had with officers around that?
Thank you. And yes, this is an area that we did probe as a result of the points made by the ward councillors in their consultation response. And I'd draw attention, I suppose, to other option C in the report, which rather suggests that there are some constraints and legal risks we need to take into account with when one implements this and to ensure that we don't expose the council to any risk in that regard. I think the biggest protection is going to be the desire of Churchgate Street residents themselves to retain the character of the area. As far as I'm aware, this is going to be well supported by residents in the main. It's important to consult to ensure that's the case. But the aim of this is to preserve the character of, as Councillor Charles rightly says, one of the jewels in the crown of Harlow. He says the jewel in the crown of Old Harlow. That's his judgment to make. Of course, there are many jewels in Latin Bush and Stewards wards and others as well. Yeah, I can hear other wards being mentioned, which is fantastic. Although, to be fair, none of us can match some of the incredible heritage that we have in Churchgate Street to protect. And as long as residents understand that that's the intention here, I believe that there will be, that's the strongest mitigation that we have available to my mind.
Chair, thank you. And it's ward prerogative for all of us to claim jewels in the crown. Absolutely. On the theme of just safeguarding and monitoring this process, as we progress into confirming the Article 4 direction, what consideration has the Council given to proactively police the Article 4 direction when it is in place in the future?
Thank you. It's an important consideration, and it may be something that we'll have to have another look at as a result of the future consultation process that I'm hoping we'll agree to tonight. There are other Article 4 directions already in place around the town, particularly around preventing further office conversions to office from offices to residential in inappropriate settings. As far as I'm aware, this has been adhered to, and there hasn't been any concern about enforcement. So I'm satisfied that current performance on enforcement of Article 4 directions is doing the job. There may be a need to focus resource on Churchgate Street. That's something that I think needs to be a process of engagement with residents to ensure that we have their support in policing that, if that's the right word for it, plus, of course, the important role that engaged ward councillors can play in that.
And then my final question, Chair, is you've rightly identified the 6-week statutory consultation period that we're going to be moving into. And as part of that, you've also mentioned one of the key consultees, which is the Churchgate Street Residents Association. What consideration have you given, and I know that you've referenced some of it in your report, around engaging not just the Churchgate Street Residents Association, but residents in this process, because it is fundamentally important to the historical character of that part of Harlow, and engaging residents in an imaginative, creative way, not just with exhibitions and also public meetings, but also to bring those residents along with us as part of this important consultation process.
Thank you, Councillor Charles, and this speaks to a theme that I'm keen to continue to pursue in this role, which I've mentioned at previous Cabinet and full Council meetings, of ensuring that we do consult as best we possibly can on planning matters and make the processes accessible and understandable for as many people as possible. I should say the consultations, the statutory requirement, I think, is for 4 weeks for an Article 4 direction, and we're running it for 6, so we're going for a longer period than we're required to do by statute, which is consistent with that. And I would draw his attention to paragraph 43 of the report, that refers to the aspiration to hold at least one public exhibition with council officers at a venue, ideally within the conservation area of the Churchgate Street area. I would want to see the Residents' Association integral to that process to ensure that that engagement, that exhibition is well attended, promoted to residents, and that anyone who has questions or really concerns about this process has every opportunity to do so at the right time in the right way.
Any further questions? Yep. Councillor Griggs, then Councillor Shepherd. Then.
Just in reference to the consultation period, as we know, consultation efforts with residents have been quite lamentable in the returns. Not for lack of effort in them actually taking place, but getting a response to them. What has been learned from the past ones in an attempt to increase the engagement in this particular consultation period?
Well, first of all, thank you, Councillor Griggs, for acknowledging the effort that's going in. And I mean, others around the Cabinet can speak to the efforts that have been made within their own portfolio areas to improve our game on this. We have pursued policy improvements, and I believe I'm right in saying seen a significant increase in engagement with our consultations in a number of areas. I think possibly the one on new bins may have got the most amount of traction from memory, but we've certainly got examples where consultations have been very well engaged with. And this is an example. There are some useful responses from residents, so I believe that we have managed to engage relatively well on this one. But it is something that I'm keen to explore further. I forget whether on the full plan we have now the review of the Statement of Community Involvement. So that's fairly imminent now, an aspiration to improve on that. And I repeat the offer that I've made to Councillor Shepherd and others previously to work with me to find ways to improve on this. I think we've got everything right so far with this process. I'm happy to take any suggestions on anything more that we could have done.
Shepherd.
Thank you. The report goes on to mention walking routes within the Churchgate Street conservation area boundary. Members may be aware that the government scrapped the looming deadline to register historic public rights-of-way. During the formulation and research of this report, were any historic public rights-of-way discovered, and what efforts might the authority make to discover and register any unknown or previously unregistered public rights-of-way?
The very short answer is not to my knowledge, but I will have to go away to be comprehensive in that. I mean, there's a huge amount of fantastic archaeological heritage in the area, as I think Councillor Shepherd will know, which I know many councillors take an interest in, including myself. I think he's also a friend of the Temple group as well. So there'll be all sorts of important heritage assets to identify and to protect. I will come back to him if I can find any detail on that, but the answer is not to my knowledge.
Councillor Hardware.
Thank you, Leader. For clarification, and for you to explain, I think, for the residents, of course, an Article 4 direction doesn't remove the opportunity for people to have porches and patios and things. If you could clarify that, you know, people now just have to apply before they do these things, on what basis and criteria are you going to use to determine whether somebody's proposals are acceptable or not?
Well, thank you, Councillor Hardware, and it probably should be said that the report possibly, in reflection, could have done more to explain what an E4D is. Some of us in this chamber will be very familiar with these, having dealt with these issues when dealing with conversions and so forth under permitted development rights. But he's absolutely right. There are still things that one will be able to do. Indeed, I draw attention to the implication under climate change, which makes clear that we're not going to prevent people, for example, from being able to install solar panels on their houses, because we recognise the need to be able to provide sustainable energy in the context of the climate emergency that this council has acknowledged. Part of what we're doing will be moving to consultation on the draft management planning guidance document, and that will be there to set out advice in detail that can help to guide Churchgate Street residents who want to know what they can do or what they can apply to do in the event that this direction does come in, we hope from February 2026.
Any further questions? Any comments? Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. This is obviously an important consultation in the Old Harlow ward. All three ward councillors, including myself, Councillor Livings and Councillor Garnett, contributed to this consultation process, as has been outlined by the portfolio holder. This is about preserving the historic character of a really ancient part of the Harlow district. As is borne out in the report, you will see that a Saxon church was built there in 1044. And that's the type of history that we're talking about here. So look, I've welcomed the opportunity to contribute as part of this process. I think one of the pressures on the mind of Churchgate Street in the wider external context is of course, the East of Harlow strategic housing site as part of the wider context of all of this. And that will probably be one of the key themes that will come up from a resident's perspective, and how the conservation area interacts with that and the process that's going to follow in the next few years. But I welcome the fact that the portfolio holder with officers have looked at the conservation area boundaries and increased it by 25%, which I think is considerable. They factored in areas like Shearing Drive and I think it's the churchyard at the back of St Mary's as well, which has contributed to the overall size, reaching an additional 25%. And so any attempt to increase the boundary of the conservation area, I certainly welcome. I know that my colleagues who represent Old Harlow do as well. I believe the introduction of Article 4 direction will enhance the status of the conservation area. I think it's an important management step from a planning perspective. For me, it's also important to learn the lessons from when the conservation area was first designated in, I think, 1969. And I know that has been highlighted and discussed as part of the consultation process that we've gone through already. We've got the statutory element to come. Churchgate Street Residents Association will want to be an active participant in that as alongside other residents in the local area, and I look forward to the future process. I will just add at the end, though, I very much hope that we can look to try and bring some of the timelines forward. I know that is difficult, but I am conscious, as are a number of residents, about mitigation as we go through this process to its conclusion. But thank you, Chair, for that, and I look forward to the rest of the process.
Good. Any further comments? No? Anything you want to add, Councillor Gunn? Good. In which case, move to the recommendations as set out on page 246. Are they agreed by the Cabinet? Agreed. Very good. Which takes us on to item 17, which I think Councillor Harbour is removing himself for.